Okay, so as everybody knows, the government just passed the stimulus bill, and over the weekend, myself and some of our key partners in this whole COVID-19 pandemic have been researching, studying, turning to those resources to find out more information. So we know you as business owners or just employees of business owners are wanting to know how this affects you. The Coronavirus Aid Relief Economic Security Act, which will be now referred to commonly as the CARES Act, allocated $350 billion to help small businesses keep workers employed amid the pandemic and economic downturn. Now, the question is, what nuances are associated with it, what qualifies for it, and how can you, as businesses, start to get prepared to make these submissions to your banks and hopefully find the relief, at least for the next few months as we continue to navigate this. Now, the one thing about this loan that is unique is that it is potentially forgivable, and there will be certain metrics that you have to meet in order to find that forgiveness of the loan. So as we've been studying it and turning to those resources, the one thing we know is that there are some gray areas, as with anything, and as we navigate that, the one thing I would tell business owners is that how do you start getting prepared for this? And so we've brought Brian Huston in from Outright HR. And Brian, what have you been telling your clients to prepare for these submissions to the SBA?
Yeah, thanks, John. The first thing I've told my clients is get your payroll records ready. So 2019 payroll records year to date for 2020, and contact your local banker. So have your accounting team get payroll ready, contact your banker, and then look at the SBA website for what's going to be required and maybe how much you're going to be eligible for.
So as we continue to update the community, the business community, greater surrounding Kansas City area, we've got some resources from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Number one, it's pretty simple. It's like, am I eligible? So that's the first thing you got to determine. We're going to post this document up on our COVID-19 site that you'll be able to access. What will lenders be looking for? So going back to what Brian said and how you can prepare your business to make this submission and how much you can borrow. So there is 2.5 times the borrower's average monthly payroll cost, not to exceed $10 million. That's the first thing that has been brought to our attention as far as what you can get. So all we can say right now is that we're going to continue to update these resources. There is a link here that you can access that'll take you right to these. And then we also have a really good frequently asked question page, which really goes a little bit more granular and into the weeds of the bill. So it may be able to address some of your specific questions because, as we know, each business is unique. The formation of the business, the type of industry that you're in. So this should help. So Brian, we know that April 1 is an important date for employers and the employee sick leave, the paid sick leave, the PTO. Can you just dive into that a little bit and the implications that will occur once April 1 hits?
Yeah, so the Department of Labor said April 1st is the day all companies with less than 500 employees need to start offering these paid sick leaves and emergency paid family medical leave. There is a required poster you need to get out to your employees, and I would recommend getting them handbook policies and sample request forms as well for how they're going to take these leaves.
Brian, what qualifies these employees for the leave?
So any employer with less than 500 employees, there are 6 reasons that would qualify an employee for paid sick leave. Employees get 10 days or 2 weeks of paid sick leave. Full-time workers, that means 80 hours, and 80 hours is the cap. Part-time workers, it's their average 2-week period. So if they normally work 30 hours a week, they get 60 hours of paid sick leave. To qualify, they either need to be in a quarantine, have been told by a medical provider to self-quarantine, or be seeking medical treatment. For those 3 reasons, the employee is paid at their full rate, up to $511 a day. There are 3 additional reasons to care for other people. So if you are caring for a family member who has the virus or symptoms of the virus, if you're taking care of a child whose school has closed, or if you have other substantially similar symptoms, you're paid 2/3 your regular rate, capped at $200 a day. So for this paid sick leave, employees are either paid their full rate or 2/3 their regular rate. If they're taking this leave to care for themselves, either they're under a local, state, or federal quarantine, or a medical provider has told them to self-isolate or quarantine. For those reasons, the employee is paid at their full rate, up to $511 a day. If they're taking this leave either to care for a kid whose school has closed or daycare provider has closed, or to take care of a family member who has symptoms of the disease, they're actually paid at 2/3 their regular rate, and that's capped at $200 per day.
Brian, the handbook policies, so if I'm understanding this correct with the bill, a lot of how the employer will have to respond to this will be based or framed on what policies they had created leading up to this event. Is that correct?
Yeah, so all employers are subject to it, but if you want to be in compliance, you should be issuing notices to your employees. Your back office should know what qualifies as leave under these emergency paid leave requirements. And you should have policies in place to be able to show we are in compliance.
And if an employer had, let's say, 4 weeks Flex PTO, does that have any bearing on how this employee paid sick leave will act? It's an additional 2 weeks as I understand it, so you don't, whether you have a Flex PTO policy or not, that will have no bearing on how this bill reacts.
That's correct. So these emergency paid leaves are in addition to leave options you're already offering your employees.
So as Brian mentioned, we've got new required posters that need to be placed prominently around your place of business, or at least shared with your employers if you're working from home. You really need to get those handbook policies out, reviewed, whether that's through one of your own resources or you need to access ours, and also the request form. So again, we're going to have these access to many of these resources on our website, specifically the required poster. We won't have your handbook policies obviously on the website. Also the request forms, you will have a way to access those documents, and that will be on the levelsagebrush.com COVID-19 page. Also Outright HR, their website has access to some of this information as well. So we touched on the emergency paid sick leave. What about the family paid sick leave? Brian, what can you give us on that?
Yeah, so again, any employer with less than 500 employees is required to offer up to 10 weeks of paid sick leave. So it's actually a 12-week job protection leave. The first 2 weeks don't need to be paid, but that's because they're being paid through the emergency paid sick leave. And then the next 10 weeks, only to care for a child whose school or place of care is closed. But for 10 weeks, employers are eligible, or required rather, to pay that employee 2/3 their rate, up to $200 a day. Again, for up to 10 weeks. Now, if you have less than 50 employees and offering that leave would jeopardize the viability of your business, there may be an exception there for you. But for the most part, I'm recommending all of my clients get prepared to offer that leave for their employees.
So we know April 1 is an important date. How are furloughs and layoffs going to react to this bill?
Yeah, so that's a good question. This bill applies to current employees of the company. So employees who are laid off or on furlough would not have this leave available to them. Now, if they'd requested the leave before the furlough or layoff went into effect, that would be a different story. But if employees were laid off or furloughed before these leaves go into effect or before they request to take the leave, they're not eligible to take the leave. These leaves are available for the remainder of the year, though, so if you bring employees back in 3 weeks, 6 weeks, they still would have those 10 days of paid sick leave and 10 weeks of paid family medical leave available should they qualify.
The last thing I will tell you is that we do have we have the submit questions button on our website. Please go there if you are having questions and submit those. We will be answering those, and if you'll tie your email address to you, we'll get you an answer directly to your email. So we're going to try and do that daily, and we'll continue to support you guys through this crisis. You know, it's affecting our business just as well, and we need to know it. just as you need to know it, and whatever way we can help you through this process, we're here to do it.